Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie from Cake Nation. I am also the UK representative for Cake International. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make an old man face. So sorry I couldn't be live with you guys today. I've just been very hectic with work. I'm going to talk you through exactly what I'm doing and exactly what I'm using. So I've got some white Saraceno and I'm going to colour this with some skin tone and some chestnut sugar flare colours. These are what I always use to make any type of skin tone colour. I would always add the skin tone in first. Depending on the darkness of the skin would depend on how much I would add in of the chestnut. Occasionally I will add in some dark brown, but for the majority of the time it is just the skin tone and the chestnut. So once I've kneaded the paste, I'm going to take a chunk of skin tone and we're just going to pop that in the middle, and then I'm going to probably use really around about the same amount of the chestnut colour, maybe just a little bit less, and we're going to mix that together. Now I've not added in as much colour as what I need because I just wanted to show you guys the amounts needed for a fairer skin tone. So we're just going to knead that in. I do prefer the gel colours to sort of like powders or anything like that, but it does heat the paste quite well. So you might need to leave it to cool down a little bit. So that's the colour that I would use, sort of like, I guess, if I was doing a white person or somebody with a fairly light skin tone. But for this one, we're just going to go a little bit darker. And so I'm just going to add some more chestnut in. This is where I usually get it all over the board, all over my hands. I can be a bit of a messy worker when it comes to colouring fondant. So you can see that the paste now is quite stretchy. It's getting a little bit sticky, so I've just got some Trex that I'm just going to rub into my hands, and that's going to stop it from sticking to me. And I'm just going to carry on kneading the fondant until all of the marbling is gone and it's all the same colour. So once we've coloured the fondant, we are going to make sure that we've smoothed out our fondant so it's got no creases or no cracks in. If you end up with any creases or cracks and you can't get them out no matter how much you're trying to mould them out, we can always put that at the back of the head that's going to get covered with the hair. So we're going to turn it into a bit of a fat teardrop shape, just pushing it between your hands, and that's just going to give us the rough shape of the face. So with a brush, I'm just going to mark in halfway down the face and then smoothing it out. This is just going to create the place where the eye sockets need to go, and it's going to give us separation from the forehead to the lower face. We're going to use our little fingers just to create some eye sockets, and then we're going to smooth that out. We don't want any ridges, everything wants to be quite smooth. So you can see that we've got the forehead, the didn't fit in the nose, and then it comes back out again for the tip of the nose. We've got the eye sockets, and then either side of the eye sockets you can see it comes in at the side. So the first part that we're going to work on is the nose. So we're going to use our finger and thumb, and we're going to press gently, and then with the other finger we're just going to push up. Now what that's going to do is it's going to give us the bulk of the nose at the bottom, and it's going to give us that mouth area there. So we're going to tuck in the sides just to separate the nose from the cheeks. We're going to roll the brush up over the forehead and just re-going over everything if you need to. So my favourite tool is a Dresden tool, and I will use this. I've got about 75 million different versions, but they all do roughly the same job. It's just I prefer different ones for different parts. So we're just going to separate the sides of the nose from the cheeks with the Dresden tool, and again just pushing in to give the bridge of the nose. We're going to roll the nose down using your finger for support so that it doesn't carry on going too far down. And then again, another Dresden tool. This one is slightly smoother and it's just got a little bit of a sharper edge than the other ones. So the first one I believe is a FMM Dresden. This one is just one from Amazon that I bought as a pack of, I think it was like 10 different tools. So we're going to push in at the side to create the nostrils. And again, we're just trying to define the bridge of the nose from the eye sockets. We're going to do the same on the other side. So with these faces, it's just about being patient. I like to use Saraceno because it allows me time to play with the face instead of, having to work very quickly because it's drying. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the holes in the nostrils first. Now there's a bit of a movement to this because what we want to do is we want to go in to the side and then bring it back down just to bring the nose down at the side. So I've got a very, very small ball tool that I use for this. It's just a metal one, and I think it's like the smallest ball tool ever. And that's what we're going to use just to create the nostrils. So at this point my paste is still quite warm, so I've got a bit more movement in there than what I would have if it was a little bit firmer. So we're going to go in to the side and then we're going to bring it down. And then we're going to do the same to the other side. Now it's going to look a bit like a pig at this point, but we do have to be patient. If you need to go in with a Dresden tool, use the smaller side and just bring it in to the center. Push it out, bring it in. And then we're just going to use the bigger side of the Dresden tool just to smooth out underneath that part of the nose. So it is just a case of just working and being patient and just seeing it through to the end. There's no need to start because it's looking a bit weird because they all go through those kind of stages. So we're going to just mark down from the nose down into the jawline, and this is going to give us the separation between the cheeks and the mouth area. It's just a very light mark at the moment. And then we're just going to go in with sort of like a wider plated Dresden and just push the cheek area up a little bit. So I've just noticed that I've got a little air bubble that's coming up. So I've got a scriber needle and I'm just going to pop that in and then rub the air bubble out. So sometimes when you're mixing and it gets very hot, air can get trapped in there. But you can just pop it with a scriber needle and that should just remove it once you smooth it over. So you can see that I'm separating the cheeks from the mouth area. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start to work on the lips. Now again, my paste is quite warm, so you could wait till it cools down at this point before you then move on to do the mouth. So we're just going to cut across with the scalpel, and then we're going to put the scalpel in and just lift up the top area of the lip. So you can see, looking a bit goofy right now, but that's the top lip, and we're just going to push up with our fingers. Now don't worry about the fact that the lip that's coming isn't the shape of a lip or anything like that. At the moment we're just getting that area up and out of the way. And then we're going to work with the bottom lip. So what I like to do with the bottom lip is like to get a paintbrush and use the obviously like the non-brush end. And what we're going to do is we're going to press it very gently into the middle of the chin, and then we're just going to roll it up, and that is going to give us our bottom lip. So you can see I've got my brush. I'm just going to mark down either side of the mouth, so you can see we've got a little bit of a chin happening, and then we're just going to pop the brush sort of like halfway on and very gently just roll, and you can see the lip line has closed, and now we've got a little bit of a bottom lip. It's a bit deformed, so we need to tuck in the sides. Now the bottom lip is very slightly shorter than the top lip, and so we're just going to shape that in, and we're just going to tuck in the sides. Now I could sit and play all day trying to get everything perfect, but I think I've learnt sort of like over my time making cakes that sometimes when something isn't going your way, or you feel like it looks a bit weird, to just sort of just have a break from doing that one part for 5 minutes, do something else, and then come back to it. So you can see I've pushed up the top lip just with the Dresden tool, and then what we want to do is at the top of the lip at the side, we're going to push that space out towards the cheeks, because we want the lips to kind of come to a point underneath the nose, and then they sort of like smooth out into the cheek area. You're going to do the same on the other side, and just smoothing over the sort of like the line for the cheek area, smoothing out the bottom lip, and just running it over with your finger if you feel it needs it. So with my tiny ball tool, we're going to create a line in the middle of the lips, which is the Cupid's bow, and you're just going to press very gently for that, and then just trying to make sure that the lip is rounded and it's equal at either side. It shouldn't be much different. I'm going to put a little bit of a din underneath the bottom lip, just with the ball tool, and then just going over the eyes. So the face is looking a bit fat at the moment, but don't worry about that, because we'll go in and we'll sort that out a little bit further on. So I've gone for the pointier Dresden tool, and we're just going to make the eyes. Now we're trying to create a kind of almond shape. And as you can see, I'm just pushing the Dresden tool underneath what will be the top lid, just to create a little bit of separation there. So you can see that you can almost see a top lid forming. And then we're just going to go and shape the rest of the eye. So it's kind of like a long slit with slightly rounded off either side. And it's slightly at an angle, because the corner of the eye that is on the outer side of the face is higher up than the corner of the eye that's towards the nose. So it's a slightly angled almond shape. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of white fondant, the Saraceno, and I'm going to roll it to be kind of like a rice grain. And I'm just then going to pop this into the eye socket that we've made. So just popping it in, and then I will smooth this out with the Dresden tool. So when I do this, I'm pushing in the corners, and I'm pushing in, like tucking the white underneath the lid at the top. What I'm trying very hard not to do is flatten the middle of the eye. I want it to still have a little bit of a curved shape. So I'm just going to make him smile a little bit more. So my fondant is still quite warm. It's quite warm here today. And then obviously I'm holding it quite a lot. So you can see there that a little bit has just come out when I've put my scalpel in to make that shape. So I'm just going to tuck that in with the Dresden tool on either side. Just wanted either side of his mouth just to lift up a little bit. And then the upper lid, I'm just going to tuck that part into the side of the mouth where we've got that little line that goes down. Just creating some little holes either side of the mouth. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and shape around the eye. So I want to give a little bit of a indentation at the top. And this is going to create our sort of like our lid and the sort of like bit underneath the eyebrow. And be careful that you're not pushing the lid down too far. Underneath here, I'm just pushing up to create sort of like a little part for the under eye. You'll have to bear with me because I'm so rubbish at naming sort of like body parts properly. But yeah, the sort of like lower lid, we want to create sort of like, so it's a little bit, I don't know whether like puffy's the right term, but just so that there's a little bit of a lower lid there. I've got this soft tip brush that I'm going to use. And this is just going to be used to, it's kind of like a really tiny finger. So I'm just going to separate the nose, the nostril, from sort of like the cheek by just going around with this tool. So you can see that I've created like an actual nostril right now. But we'll use this also to create wrinkles. I've got quite chunky fingers, so it just means that it's like a really tiny pointy finger. And it helps, you know, get rid of any like cracks and stuff like that as well. So I'm just going to create some sort of like, do they call them crow's feet? Just at the side of the face, the side of the eye. And then just some sort of like wrinkles just underneath the lower lid as well. Later on I'll do the forehead. But yeah, just a few little wrinkles to make him look a little bit older, a little bit wiser, we say. So you just press him very, very lightly with this. You're not looking to create really deep wrinkles, just really, really light marks in the fondant, because what we're going to do is we're going to paint it a bit later on. So we just want a tiny little groove for the paint to then go sit in. So just shaping above the eye again, smoothing out anywhere that you might have touched. I'm just going to shape up that top lid a little bit more. So you want it to be kind of not like a straight line, but a kind of smooth line. You don't want any jagged edges in there or anything like that. So once I've done one side of the face, this is when I'll move on to the other. Now I hate trying to match up between the eyes because I can never get them quite perfect. But you just want to, what's the turn of phrase? They don't have to be identical twins, but they have to be related. So you want to create them as similar as you can, but even in people, our eyes are not the same. You know, each side of our face is not the same. But you generally want to create something that is very similar to what we've already done. So using the same process as before, we're going to, you know, lift up the upper lid and just mark out the lower lid. So whilst the pointier Dresden tool is good for digging in and creating that upper lid, the wider Dresden tool is good for sort of like smoothing out any lines. So again, we're just going to create the little rice grain that we did before. Now, I left this part in because it's a mistake that I make all of the time, and I just want you guys to see me fix that mistake. So I've made a rice grain, I've popped it in the eye, I've tried to squash it in, and it's a little bit big, it's a little bit bulky. It doesn't look the same as the other eye. It sits further out of the skin, and the more that I'm pushing it in, the more it's just becoming evident that it's quite a lot bigger than the other eye. So I do this every single time. It's always with this eye. It's never with the other eye. I don't know what it is. I would have thought that after all of this time, I would have learnt not to do that. But if this is something you do, this is what you would do. So I've removed a chunk of the fondant out. Now, usually the fondant is not as hot as what it is right now, so it's not as sticky. So usually when you pop it out, because we've used no water to stick it in, the colour will just pop out. But in this instance, it's hot and it's not done that. So what I've done is I've used my Dresden tool to smooth over where it's come out. You can see that there's a tiny bit of brown that's now in there, but I'm not worried about that because we're going to cover that with the eye that we put in there. So this is what I mean by just bearing with the process, because there's a lot of people would just restart over at this point, but you can still fix it from something like this happening. So I'm smoothing over, just trying to make the eye a similar size and a similar shape. It does look a bit weird because obviously I've got that little bit of brown in there that I can see. But like I said, we're going to cover that over with the pupil, so we don't need to worry about that. So creating the crow's feet again at this side. So very, very, very light movements, nothing too heavy. And then again underneath the eyes. Separating that nostril from the side of the face as well. So because it is a soft nibbed brush, it's quite flexible when you're pushing it into the face as well. So I'm just trying to flatten the sides of the mouth and pushing the lip up a little bit as well. So it is just a case of sort of like looking at what you're doing and trying to, like I say, make it equal, trying to smooth out any lines, and just really being patient with what you're making. So now I'm going to level off the face. So I do this all the time. I always start from the chin and go up to the jaw, and the same on the other side. And I just use this process now to take off the chunk that's underneath the neck, and also just to help kind of like shape the face a little bit. So once I've marked it out, I'm just using my fingers and I'm just pushing that fondant in. Now you can see how soft it still is because, like I said, it's quite hot today. So I'm just going to roll out the excess with a brush, and then using the brush just to lift the chin up a little bit. And then I'm just shaping now the face with my thumbs. And then we're just going to trim off the excess. Now, don't throw this bit away. We're going to use that for ears and eye colour as well. So you can see how it's just transformed that bit of the lower chin. And I'm just using my finger just to smooth over anything that's not quite soft or it's got lines in it. And again, using that tiny soft tip brush just to re-go over the lines that my fingers would just never fit in. With the brush, I'm going to pull it to one side a little bit, just to create, I don't know whether you would call this like a jowl or a, I don't know, saggy bit of your cheek maybe. But just very gently for that bit. Pull back in at the eyes, and again just shaping the chin area. So I'm just smoothing out a little bit more on the lip. So I'm just bringing down from the nose to the upper lip, and I'm only applying such a small amount of pressure when I'm doing this, because I'm not looking to distort what I've already made. I just want to smooth it out a little bit. So just rounding off the head and just repointing the chin. Now, don't worry if you end up with a flat head back when you're doing this. We rest it on the table quite a lot. When I add the hair, I make it quite bulky at the back so it's a little bit rounded, just so that it can have a little bit more shape at the back so that it's not completely flat. So for the eyes, especially with the smaller models like this one, I prefer to use really tiny balls of fondant. Obviously, if it was a bigger cake, I would look to hand paint the eyes. But because it's so small, I prefer to use fondant. Now I take a tiny ball and I place it in the eye, and then I use my Dresden tool just to spread the eye out till it's the shape that I want it to be. Now I just find this a lot easier because it allows me the ability to change the shape of it. If I was going to paint this on, especially with it being so small and so delicate, if I went wrong, to try and tidy up that mess that I've made would be really, really difficult. So for me, for the smaller figures, I just find that this is just the easier way to do it. Again, when you're on the other eye, I find it easier to be able to have the fondant that I can move it so that I know that both eyes are the same height, the same size and in the same place. I've struggled before where I've drawn one on and then gone to draw the other one and it's just slightly off kilter. So I prefer this technique because obviously it allows you to be able to move the fondant, and if you go wrong because we've not stuck it down with any water and you're unable to pull it into place, you can just take it off and just start over again. Now you want to make sure that when you're putting it on, you're not overlapping the upper and the lower lid. It kind of wants to sit in there, and remember that the balls of fondant need to be really, really tiny, because otherwise what happens is you end up with an eye that's kind of got like many thick layers. So when you look at it from the side, it just looks a bit weird, because obviously you've got the colour bit of the eye, then you've got the pupil, then you've got the little bit of white that we put in for the reflection of light. So once you have put those in, this is pretty much the face detailing done. So we've done the nose, we've done the mouth, we've done the eyes. What's left to do now is we need to colour the eyes. So if I was doing, say, obviously like now I'm doing brown eyes, I've used the same colour as the skin tone just for the eye colour. And I'm going around the edges first, and then up at the top underneath the lid, that's the darkest part of the eye. If I was going to do blue eyes, I would use a little bit of blue fondant. If I was going to do green eyes, I would use either blue or brown. Those are the only colours that I tend to use for eye colours. I just think that once you it gives you kind of like a two-tone effect, like it's not one solid colour. You've got the colour of the paint and then you've got the colour of the fondant underneath. So you can see that I've left the top of the eyes a little bit darker and underneath is quite pale. And I'm just really wetting my brush using quite a lot of water. And then what we're going to go do is we're going to put this through all the creases that we've got. So you're just going to slap it on. It doesn't have to be too neat, this job. And we're going to go through the creases in the cheeks, any of the wrinkles under the eyes, in between the nose, anywhere where any kind of change in the tone would appear. So crevices where there would be a shadow, or just like in the chunks of the cheeks and stuff like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to wet the brush and take the colour off the brush, and then we're just going to re-go over what we've done. And what this will do is it blends out that line, so it's not as noticeable, but it leaves some of the colour in the crease, so that when it dries, we've almost like shaded. So if you haven't got much experience in doing faces, I would leave this until the last moment, because obviously now you've wet the fondant, it can be a bit sticky. So if you're prone to putting your hands everywhere, then obviously you're going to make blotches on the fondant. So I've just added some wrinkles in the forehead. Again, not pressing too deep, and making sure that the wrinkles that I'm putting on the forehead are not straight lines, because we don't have straight lines of wrinkles on our forehead. There's grooves and there's bends, and it's not just one solid line. There'll be, bigger lines, smaller lines, and just using the same process that we did before. So just adding in some dark colour and then using a clean brush with a bit of water on, just to take the majority of that colour off. If you end up with areas where you can see where the colour stops and starts, just take your brush and we're just going to smooth that out so it's not as noticeable. So it's still looking a bit strange right now. I'm just going to take some dark brown, and all I'm doing with the dark brown is I'm just going to go around the eyes. So just to darken up the side of the eyes, and then just a little bit of this between the lips as well. So you can see that I'm just adding it to the edges, and again this just gives like an extra dimension to the eyes that we're working on. So if you do have any questions about anything that you've seen, if you pop it in the comments, then I will try my best to respond to you guys. And I'm just doing the dark brown again at the top of the eye as well, because this is the part that's darkest. So it's darkest because you've got the shadow from the lid, the shadow from the brow bone and your eyebrows. So that's why that's always a little bit darker, and underneath is a little bit lighter. If you had your character looking to a certain side, then obviously that direction would still be at the top, but it would just change slightly to one side. So just painting under the bottom lid, and again we're going to do that for the top lid on both eyes. Men don't really have eyelashes, so I try to not, they do have eyelashes, but I think if you put eyelashes on a figure of this size, it can look a bit feminine. So what I tend to do instead is I will just paint around the eyes, sort of like the upper lid and the lower lid in a dark brown. If I find that it's too dark, I use the same method that we've done for the wrinkles, and I will just use a brush just to take that off. So you can see I've put some in the lips, and we're just taking a clean brush and we're just going to take the excess paint out. Again, I would leave this until the last moment if you're not used to working with faces. A little bit just underneath the bottom of the lip as well. If you was doing a lady, I would miss out this step completely. Still maybe possibly do underneath the lip, but I would, paint with whatever colour lipstick you was gonna put her in. So the next step now is the blacks of the eyes. So again, I've just got some black Saraceno, and I'm just going to roll a small blob. Now I have really chunky fingers and I would never be able to roll anything this small at all. So I usually roll a small ball and then I will just keep cutting it down until it's the size that I want. Now the colours of the eyes that we put in were really, really small. So these black dots need to be even smaller. And we're just going to use the same process that we did before, where we pop it in the eye and then look to spread it out. So just using the Dresden tool to pick it up. You won't need any water to stick it down because the eyes are still tacky from the colouring that we've just done. And again, I prefer this method for the same reason as I do with the colours of the eyes. It's just that you can move this around and it just makes it easier to get both the same. So that's what you should have so far. And then for the reflection in the eyes, we're going to take some white fondant, and again this needs to be even smaller than the black. So the way that the light reflections work is if you put it in one eye on the right, then it should really be on the right in the other eye. Again, if you put it in the left in one eye, so wherever you put it in one eye, it needs to be in the same place on the other eye. When you're doing characters like this, I would only tend to use one light reflection in each eye. If I was doing kind of like a cute character, then I would tend to usually put two. Again, in the same space as each other, so usually one at the top and one at the bottom, one being a larger one and one being a small one. So you can see that just by adding the little dots of white in the eye, it kind of really brings the eyes to life and changes the character. So next we're going to work on the eyebrows. So what I've got some Sugar Flare Super White, which is a powder. If you've not used this before, you just add a little bit of water. I always use the lid. Take some of the powder and then it will give you a white colour. I prefer to use this over the paint. And then I've just got some black Sugar Flare. I think it's the licorice colour. And this is one of the gel pastes. And I'm just going to add that into the tub that I've got to make a light grey colour. Now, when I dab my brush, the mixture becomes a little bit thicker, so you may need to add a little bit of water in at this stage. When you tap your brush, it kind of like separates a little bit. So I think I tried to show you in the video, but I don't think you can see it really. So I start off with a dark grey, and I'm just going to put some brush strokes on to create the eyebrow. Like so. And then we're going to do the same for the other one. So this needs to be a fairly thick, dryish consistency. If you have it too runny, it's just going to run everywhere. And we really want the brush to kind of like separate and sort of like as you're applying the hair strokes, you've got maybe the brush is separated into two, so you're doing two strokes at the same time. So just check that the eyebrows are roughly in the same place on each eye. Just going in and amending that if need be. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add some more white to the mixture that we've got, just to make a lighter colour of grey. And then what we're going to do is just re-go over what we've already done. And this just adds now, different colours of grey hairs. You very rarely see people who have got just one shade of grey hair. And so we're going to do the same for the other eyebrow. So you can just see it just gives it a bit more kind of like a realistic hint to it. And then I'm going to use the same brush, but this time I'm just dabbing on for facial hair. So when you dab with the brush, because it's quite a dry mixture, it leaves kind of like a speckled effect on the face, which is good if you're looking to recreate some kind of like stubble. Because obviously this character is black, his beard would be usually kind of like really coarse and curly. So if you're going to tap like this, you would get like a kind of like an effect of some form of stubble, where the beard is not going straight down, so it just gives it a little bit of it's a little bit different. If I was going to do a white person, I would, instead of tabbing, I would go down in strokes just to give it some lines. So I've just taken off a little bit of the colour, because when I put it on I had too much paint on my brush and it came on a little bit thick. And so I've just removed some of the excess, and I'm just going to re-go over that. We're using the same method as before. So yeah, what I was saying is that if I was doing somebody with kind of like a longer beard, or somebody who was white, or somebody who had a straight beard, I would use the same technique that I used for the eyebrows, but I would obviously just do the strokes coming down so that you can kind of see like little lines. This technique would be good for anybody that has stubble, so who hasn't got a full beard, or for anybody who's, got a little bit of a beard but the hair is curly. I'm going to work my way kind of like up to where the ears would be, and then underneath the chin, just carrying on dabbing. And then try to match it up so that it's the same on both sides. And again, like I said, try not to put too much paint on the brush, and try not to have the brush too wet. You could always have a paper towel to dab it in, to take the excess off. So I'm just going to add in a bit of a tash. The thing with the Sugar Flare stuff is that the powder is it does dry out quite quickly. So if you do put too much water in there, it will not take long for it to dry at all. So again, just making a bit of a lighter mixture. And for the moustache, you can see that I'm drawing it down in lines. This is the effect that I would have done on the whole beard if the facial hair had been a little bit longer, or it would have been straight. Trying to miss out the Cupid's bow in the middle, because it's very rare that somebody with short hair would have visible stubble in this part. The hair tends to be a little bit lighter in that area. So just re-going over, adding some of the lighter colours in there. Just helps give it sort of like I guess like a different dimensional view. Is that even a saying? 2D or 3D, it just gives it like an extra layer so that it doesn't look so flat to the face. So just going throughout the beard and just adding some more of that different colour. And don't forget the sides. So once we've done this, we've got the hair and we've got the ears to do. Now I usually prefer to put the hair on first and then do the ears, just so that I don't have to work my hair around something that's already there. So I'm going to add white fondant for the hair for this one, and then we're going to add some colour to it to change it whilst it's on there. So I'm going to go for grey hair. So I've got my white Saraceno, and what we're going to do is we're going to roll it into a ball, and then we're going to start to flatten the edge. So we're going to make him a little hat. So you can see how it's peaking up in the middle, and I'm just flattening it around the side. Kind of looks like a bit of like a mushroom top, I would say. And the reason that we do this is so that it is adding a roundness to the back of the head, because obviously we've been working on the table, so the back is quite flat. So we're going to push that on, and then just attaching and pushing down the sides to the head. Now I'm not too fussed that it's not coming as far down as I want it to, because I'm going to go on and add some more on. So I've just got a little bit of excess. I'm just going to take that off the back, and then we're just going to fold that in at the bottom as well. So it kind of looks like he's wearing a little hat at the moment. So you can see at the back it's quite rounded, and so I'm just going to round that on the table. And then because it's quite rounded now, as you're working on him, he will be facing you and just looking right at you. So we're going to make kind of like a bit of hair for the front. So I think you would call it, is it a widow's peak, where it comes down at the front a little bit and then up like he's receding a little bit. It's kind of like a fat sausage, and then we're just going to thin it out and make it a little bit wavy before we put it on. So we're going to push that in place. Now I'm not too bothered about the join at this point, because we are going to stipple the hair. So if you don't know what stippling is, it's a brush that is coarse. It's got thick bristles, and it will leave an indentation. You just sort of like tap it on the whatever it is that you're doing, the hair or fabric or whatever. Similar way to how we did the beard, and it will leave dints in. I like to use it for the hair because it will leave an uneven texture. So I'm just going to roll those two pieces of fondant together. Again, not worried about that line at all. And that's the kind of shape that we're going to go for the hair. So just making sure that the join from the forehead to the hair is quite smooth and it's not too far off the forehead. And then with your scriber needle, you're just going to go around the edge of the hairline, just with some really fine strokes that will be a bit like hair. So we don't really have to worry about going further in than this, because like I said, we're going to stipple it, but we want to do the edges of the hair just so that it's not such a flat join from the forehead to the hair. So just working your way around the hairline. Just making sure that you kind of like following the direction of that the hair would lie. And then we're going to pop the ears on. So just the same skin colour that we had before. And we're going to roll 2 balls. So I'm just going to chop that in half. And then with a little bit of water, we're going to stick this to the side of the head, like so. And then just using your brush, just pushing it down. Now usually I would have used water, that's why I said that. But because it's so humid and hot today, my fondant is quite sticky, so it's managing to stick fine without the water. So now we've added the ears, I'm going to add sort of like a little bit of white fondant just down the side, just so that he's got some sideburns. So pushing that into place. Obviously, if I'd have put the ears on before I put the hair on, I would have had to have left room for all of this, or had to have cut my fondant to be able to go around the ear, which is why I always choose to put the ear on after I've put the bulk of the hair on. It just makes it a little bit quicker. So do the same for the other side. And then just using the scriber needle just to create some lines in there, just to give it a bit more of a hairy feel. So this is the brush that I use for stippling, and I'm just literally just pressing on just to give a little bit of texture. Now this brush, I think I bought it from somewhere like Home Bargains or B&M, and it came with a pack of about 50 other brushes, and I had maybe 3 or 4 of those. So you can see from this one that it's been well used because all the bristles at the end are all spread out and a little bit wavy. So when you're doing the stippling, be careful not to go too far on the hair that you're now touching the face, because we don't want to stipple that part, we just want to stipple the hair. So something like that. And now what I'm going to do is the same method that we had with the beard. I'm just going to wet my brush a little bit, and then we're going to dab this on the head. So I just need to make up some more colour. So the same process as before, some of the white dust, a little bit of water, and then some of the black licorice to make a bit of a grey colour. And then dab in your brush and then put that on the hair. So the good thing about doing it this way is not only are you stippling the fondant, but also how you're applying the colour. It's kind of in patches, so it's not a full colour. It's not like just putting grey fondant on the hair. You've got the different colours of grey, and then you've got the white coming through. So you're just going to cover the whole head, trying to get around the hairline. So don't worry if you catch any of the forehead or any of the ears, because we can go in and wash that off. And then I'm just using the smaller brush just to go in around the hairline, so he doesn't just have white hair at the join from the forehead. Don't forget to do the sideburns too. And that's it from me today. I hope you've enjoyed my demo. Like I said, if you do have any questions, you can leave them in the comments box below, and I will respond to those. But yeah, thanks for joining me today. I hope you've had a good time. See you later.